All right, everyone. Welcome to, I think, the first live stream that I've done since I've changed the office and changed all the settings and done all the things here. So welcome, folks. As you, I think, all know, probably from the most recent videos, I've totally done my office slash studio slash library slash the Esoterica layer as much as it was or is. And one of the things that I've done is dramatically changed. Got a new camera, got new mics, got all kinds of new stuff, and I got a new background. So the Esoterica studio, I guess, is slightly different in the sense that I can both have it at standing level, which I'm doing now, and I can also do it sitting down, which is nice. But welcome, everybody. Welcome to what I think is the first live stream since I've renovated the studio, and looking forward to getting into some conversation and talking with folks. But yes, this week was my birthday. My birthday was on February. I turned 45, which doesn't sound like a thing that is true, but it is true. My back certainly feels it when I'm at the gym or hauling wood in for a wood stove, and so I have certainly earned all 45 of those years, I think. And 45, which I don't know. I don't feel any significantly older, but like I said, I asked me that after I've been hauling wood in or go to the gym too hard, and I certainly feel like I'm at least 45. Um, but welcome, everybody. Welcome to live stream. Thank you for all the well wishes for the birthday. Yeah, it was a good birthday. I got to actually went and got a new suit measured out, so I'm gonna have a new suit, which is nice. It's always nice to get some new clothes. So I got that done, and that was kind of my birthday. I had to get up early the next morning to take my partner to the airport, so I couldn't go too hard. But no one should be going that hard when they're 45 anyway. Um, the days of the ragers are over, if there ever were any days like that for me, really. But yeah, then we have Alchemy Day. This is an idea that I've put forward on Reddit and some other places where I think we should celebrate Alchemy Day on February the 11th. And it's not because it's the day after my birthday. It's because that is when Robert of Chester first translated the Liber de Compositione Alchemiae from Arabic to English, and that basically inaugurates the days of alchemy in Europe. Prior to that, there were basically no known alchemical texts, and after that, we have a huge stream of alchemical texts flooding into Europe. And so I've argued that February the 11th should be Alchemy Day. Now, how one celebrates Alchemy Day, I don't know. You can read your favorite alchemist or get a copy of the Ripley Scroll or do whatever. I don't know how you would read some alchemical poetry. Read some Jung or something. I don't know, but yeah, so February 11th was Alchemy Day. I celebrated it by trying to decipher some really cool marginalia at the end of a text by Digby. So we, on the upcoming catalog, the new upcoming Esoterica catalog, we're going to have a volume by Digby, and it's in a German translation. And what's neat is that when the binder or whoever had it bound, they included a lot of end papers, and they included these end papers because they were interested in recording some alchemical notes in the text. And what we have at the end of this is about a dozen pages of pretty dense alchemical notes filled with deconomen and all the things you would associate with alchemy, and really cool notes. And so I spent some part of Alchemy Day, February the 11th, trying to decode some of these 17th century alchemical texts, probably mostly dealing with antimony and the use of antimony specifically in, I think, a medical context. But not the kind of thing you'd want to take, I don't think, but certainly neat, just the same. And was neat sort of deciphering some alchemy and working on that. So that's how I celebrated Alchemy Day, at least from my position. But no, the other thing is we've got this new setup. We got Esoterica now in 4K, if you can believe that, or if you care. I don't even really own a TV that can even watch things in 4K, so I will never probably even watch my videos in 4K. But YouTube is really pushing in the direction of folks getting stuff in 4K, because people are watching YouTube. It's a streaming service, right? Basically, and you need your videos to be a bit higher quality if they're especially going to be streaming on these really big fancy TVs that cost a lot of money. And so there's a lot of people, YouTube, suggesting that we do videos in 4K, or at least the high end version of 1080p. And so, started recording esoteric episodes in 4K and editing them in the 4K, which I have to admit is a lot more taxing on the system. I really was quite naive about just how taxing it would actually be on my computer, which is basically a gaming laptop, because you need the GPU to do a lot of the rendering, especially for these longer form videos. And I really had no idea that it would be quite as taxing as it is, and it is quite taxing. And so again, just the learning curves of learning how to do YouTube and do it correctly and do it in a way that is good for the audience and such. But so yeah, with new content and a new a slightly different format, and I think at a significantly higher quality resolution. So that's good. I'm really happy about that. I think it's great. And then we've been rolling out new content. So we got 2 episodes in the can recently. One on the oldest book of the Americas, the Mexican Maya Codex, which is just fascinating to read. I mean, just really fascinating to get into how the Mayan calendar worked and how these Venusian cycles really mattered for them, and the ability to calculate these Venusian cycles in really complex ways. Really fascinating stuff. I mean, just the mathematical prowess and the astrological and astronomical prowess that goes in to the production of a book, that when you look at it, it can just look like a bunch of random weird symbols. And when you get into it, you're like, oh yeah, this is actually a cool astronomical almanac that someone produced in sometime in the 13th century, and survives down till now. And it was really a lot of fun to do that. And as folks know, I have a deep interest in the Maya, and in the Maya language, and so it's really, or Maya languages, I should say. Maya is really a language group, not a single language. But yeah, a lot of fun, a really fun episode, and also it's kind of great to get out of the sort of Western esoteric world and look at something a bit further afield that also just doesn't get a lot of traction. There's not a lot of good content about that specific manuscript on YouTube, so it was fun to be able to make an episode about something that is otherwise not supported, at least not in English. There was a lot of more content in Spanish, which makes sense, but there isn't a lot of content on the Codex in English, and so it was nice to be able to make a video on that. And then the most recent video that we did here is this recent episode on Proclus, which I've been threatening to do forever. And it was on Proclus's on the hieratic art according to the Greeks, which is just a fascinating little fragment of a text, super interesting just in terms of its impact in the history of Western esotericism and the development of magic, and also as an expression of Proclus's own religious sensibilities, which are really, really fascinating. And part of the reason why Proclus is not more known is precisely this. I was just on our group Patreon hangout that I refer to as office hours. Really lovely folks, and we were just talking about the fact that Proclus is not really well known as Plotinus, for instance. And part of the reason why Proclus is not as well known as Plotinus is because of the fact that there is a kind of academic bias, or there has been a kind of academic bias against Proclus and Iamblichus, precisely because of their commitment to theurgy. And because of their commitment to theurgy, they were viewed as sort of weird pagan survivals, and not as the way they should be viewed, as authentic expressions of the Platonic Academy. Because I mean, Damasius and Proclus were both the head of the Platonic Academy in the 5th and 4th centuries, or 4th and 5th century respectively. Yeah, no, 6th and 5th centuries. And they just don't get the respect they deserve. And part of the reason why they don't get respected is because they're thought of as weird magician people. And it's a real pity that this has happened, because it basically means that Proclus and Iamblichus, outside of a very small field of specialists, doesn't really get read that much, which is terrible. It's just really, really a pity that Proclus is not, the Elements of Theology is not a better known text. It's a fantastic text, and so it's just one of these great, I don't know what the right word is. It's a great miss on the part of academic philosophy, where these great titans, Iamblichus and Proclus and Damascus, just don't get the attention they deserve, and they don't get the attention they deserve, not because their ideas and books don't merit attention, but because of a systematic bias and that obtains in academic philosophy against them, as basically sort of pagan holdovers. So again, this is just really, to my mind, a great pity about how they're sidelined, and makes me want to make more content on Proclus and Damascus, which I'm definitely going to be doing. I think I definitely want to do an episode on the Elements of Theology, which is a wonderfully a wonderful combination of analytic clarity and sort of mystical insight. So I think the next episode I'll do is on Proclus, at least, is going to be one on the Elements of Theology. Yeah. So at any rate, lots of more content coming on these sort of later Greek philosophers, Iamblichus, Proclus, Damascus, and some others. So also need to do some more stuff on Middle Platonism. Like, I really need to do an episode on Numenius, who in many ways is sort of the elephant in the room for so much of this material. Numenius is one of these philosophers that the Corpus Medicum seems to know, the Gnostics seem to know. A lot of people seem to be relying on a lot of ideas that come out of Numenius, but because he's one of these Middle Platonists, he just doesn't get the attention he deserves. And again, he's one of these characters that was decisively important in the history of the development of Platonism and esotericism more generally. But otherwise, outside of a small group of experts, you never really hear much about Numenius. So at any rate, another person I need to come back to and cover. So one of the things I'm going to do this year, I think, is try to do a lot more work on the history of philosophy as it pertains to Western esotericism, because as folks know, my training is in philosophy. It's actually not in religious studies, and I feel like because of so much of the folks that study Western esotericism are trained primarily in religious studies, they tend to approach it from that angle. Whereas my training is in philosophy, and so I'm much more interested in the philosophical underpinnings of how a lot of these ideas work. And so I'm much more interested, or I'm better trained, I should say, to deal with some of the philosophical elements. And so these relatively unknown characters in the history of Western esotericism are folks that I really want to, or in the history of philosophy as it pertains to Western esotericism, are some of the folks that I want to get into a bit more. So yeah, look for videos on Numenius, some of the more esoteric Stoics, Panetius and Cleanthes and folks like that. So yeah, look for that content as it rolls out this year, and looking forward to doing that sort of stuff. Well, what's coming up next? What am I working on for new upcoming content? One thing I'm working on is episode on Trithemius. So I'm reading a lot of Trithemius. So I'm going to do an episode on the Stenographia and the Polygraphia. Less so the Polygraphia, but more the Stenographia. Although the Polygraphia is important because it's the first time in print that the so-called witches alphabet appears. So if you've ever written in, what is it called? Theban? I think it's technically called Theban. It shows up in the 3 books of occult philosophy. But the first time the so-called alphabet of the witches appears, it actually appears in Trithemius's Polygraphia. So I'll probably do an episode just at least focusing on that element. But I definitely want to do an episode on the Stenographia and Trithemius more generally, and sort of the debate around Trithemian magic that followed after him. So that's coming down the pike. Been reading a lot of Bernard of Clairvaux, 4 volumes of his sermons on the Song of Songs, which is absolutely fantastic. Well, it's mixed. I mean, not all 86 of the sermons are that great, but the good ones are just shockingly good. So I want to do an episode on Bernard as a mystic of love, and how important basically love mysticism in many ways is inaugurated by Bernard. And on the one hand, he inaugurates this love mysticism, but on the other hand, he also inaugurates the Knights Templar. And I've made an episode about his relationship to the Knights Templar. His cousin, Hugh of Pain, actually founded the Knights Templar. And Bernard kind of gives mystical justification and mystical understanding of why the Knights Templar should exist and why they can do violence and the way that they do, at least defensive violence, why they should be able to do that. And so I've done that episode already on Bernard, but it definitely was not his due diligence. It was not my due diligence. And so I want to come back and cover his mystical theology, which is proving to be very intimidating. Bernard of Clairvaux left behind about 3,500 pages of material in the critical edition, and it is, and that's in Latin, right? So it's 3,500 pages of really dense, mystical Latin text, along with a lot of letters and things. And he and Hildegard of Bingen were in correspondence briefly, which is really cool. But when you try to manage reading some reasonable representative chunk of a guy who wrote 3,500 pages, and when of course you talk in English, you're talking about that 3,500 pages would probably become 5,000 pages in English. But and this is just 86 sermons. That's 4 relatively full volumes, right? It's four decent sized volumes. And that's just the sermons on the Song of Songs, 86 sermons on the Song of Songs. So, yeah, doing a representative episode of Bernard of Clairvaux is super intimidating, I have to admit, but I think I'm making headway, and I'm looking forward to getting into it just because he's such a decisive character, and his mysticism of love is some of the most profound stuff I've ever read about love. And so he's just a really, really deep and probative thinker and mystic, who I think in a lot of cases when I work on these Catholic mystics or Christian mystics in general, I always feel like they get short shrift. I feel like the occult people don't like them because they're Christians, and so there's sort of an anti-Christian bias that exists in the wider sort of occult esoteric community for reasons that aren't totally unreasonable, right? A lot of people have religious trauma as the result of institutional Christianity, and I totally get that. It's not like my religion has had exactly a peachy relationship with institutional Christianity over the centuries, but I feel like they sort of baby out with the bathwater because some folks don't like Christianity, they don't read any of these mystics, and I feel like that's a really sad missed opportunity. But on the other hand, I feel like many of the pious Christians also don't read them very carefully either, because once they become a saint, they kind of have this halo, literally, around them in such a way that they're more sacred than read, they're more venerated than read, they're more venerated than studied. And so I feel like they also kind of get short shrift by even pious Christian people, because now that Bernard is is a saint, he's sort of safely away from being read critically or something. And I feel like both of those are missed opportunities. I feel like, Bernard is a super fascinating guy and super fascinating theorist of mystical love, mystical theology in general. And just well worth appreciating in the history of mysticism and in many ways of Western esotericism. In fact, I even feel like mysticism in general kind of gets short shrift in the history of Western esotericism for methodological reasons that are neither here nor there, I guess. But at any rate, another episode coming up on Bernard of Clairvaux. I mentioned the Stenographia. This is a copy of the Stenographia from 1621. Let's see, it's neat if I can find a cool sigil in here. This also includes the apology defending Trithemius from being accused of criminal necromancy. But let me see if I can find the cool magical circle that you use to conjure the angels to send your message out into the ether. Let me see if I can find it really fast. What's neat about the Stenographia is that we knew there were codes in the Stenographia, and of course Trithemius tells us there are codes, but it wasn't until the 1990s that Book 3 of the Stenographia was actually shown to contain codes as well. And it was Jim Reed, the same guy that deciphered the book of Soiga, John Dee's book of Soiga, that also found the code, deciphered the codes in book 3 of the Trithemius. But here is, we can see it. Hopefully it'll come into focus. But yeah, the great sigil that, in fact, John Dee actually copied out by hand. You can still see it in his papers that John Dee copied out in order to communicate with angels. So we have the exact same magic circle used here for summoning the angels, by which to send off magical symbols, magical correspondences. So it's quite a neat volume. This is a neat volume in general. Also, I was speaking of the Song of Psalms. Actually, I have on my table. I have an incunable of the Song of the Bernard of Clairvaux's sermons on the Song of Songs. Is printed in 1497, and what's really neat about it, so I can find a page that's the red pops a little more than the blue, but this is printed in 1497, and it's neat because you can see at the top there, or is it at the top? Yeah, it's at the top here. You can see the rubricated letter. And that rubrication is all done by hand. So every single initial in this incunable, well, incunable just mean in the cradle. There are books that are printed before 1500 or 1500 before, but every single one of these has a rubricated hand-on initial. And this is Bernard of Clairvaux's sermons on the Song of Songs, printed in 1497. So right within the first 50 years of printing, which is quite a neat volume. So yeah, it's one thing to study them in this. It's another thing to study them in this. Right? This feels like somehow the chunk makes it feel more real, but also, it being, from 1497 somehow connects me. It makes me feel more connected to Bernard, even though Bernard lives in the, in the 12th century. So, at any rate, some antiquarian book porn, is that the word? I know I shouldn't use that word, I'd probably get demonetized. But yeah, thank you all folks for coming and hanging out. What else do I have new coming down the pike before I jump over to do some Q&A? What else am I wanting to do? I gotta look at my book pile over here about the Paul episode. Yes, I have an episode about Paul coming. I know I've threatened to do an episode about Paul, but I have an episode about sort of my take on the historical Paul, which is a lot of fun. There's a lot of moving parts to doing an episode on Paul and his theology, and one of those moving parts is all the really cool scholarship being done in Marcion studies by folks like M. David Litwa, whose channel you should absolutely check out if you haven't already. But one of the cool things that folks like Litwa and Badoon, and folks like that are doing are reconstructing what is probably an earlier version of the Pauline corpus known to Marcion, and that called the Apostolos. And that earlier Pauline texts, especially like Galatians and stuff, give us a window into Paul at an earlier level, perhaps, than the canonical Gospels do. Now, in terms of theology, not a lot changes, but it is worth noting that we do have access to an earlier strata, an earliest stratum of the Pauline letters, and that's worth knowing. And so I'll be taking some of that into account when I do this episode on Paul. Love him or hate him, Paul really is the founder of Christianity. Jesus and James and his movement, I think, would have gone the way of the dodo, especially after the Bar Kokhba rebellion. But had it not been for Paul, I don't think that Christianity would have become certainly not a world religion, certainly not the world religion that it became. And I think that Paul often gets, again, it's sort of like people don't like Paul, or they don't like the things that are attributed to Paul. And he gets discounted because people don't like him, or they think of him as a corrupter of the original gospel of Jesus, or some kind of combination of those things. And rather than just appreciating the fact that Paul was a genuine mystic, and I do believe he was a genuine mystic, Yeah, I think he had at least 2 profound, life-changing mystical experiences. And further, he's a theological genius. And again, I don't have to agree with his theology to admit that he was a genius, but I do think that Paul was an authentic theological genius who pioneered a hybridized Hellenistic Jewish religion, that was just incredible. I mean, again, I don't buy it, but me not buying it doesn't mean that it's not completely ingenious. And so I think there's a lot of esoteric stuff hiding in Paul too. I think Paul um, is up to very strange and interesting things with some proto Merkava mysticism, and also mystery religion, and lots of other things going on. So I find Paul just to be endlessly fascinating in a way that, honestly, in many ways, Jesus is a lot less fascinating to me. I often think of Jesus as sort of interesting, of course, but Jesus's teachings are basically run of the mill Jewish apocalypticism that I think would have been very common at that time. I think there have been a lot of people out there teaching something very similar to that, and we see versions of it in the Essenes and other documents. Um, but the real, to me, the real ingenious person, the real theological powerhouse of that movement is, without any doubt, Paul. Now, again, that doesn't make him right. It doesn't make him an authentic bearer of the message of Jesus. He never met the guy, or at least he never met him in life. He met him in a mystical vision. But regardless of whether or not any of it's true, there is a dynamism and an innovation in Paul's thought that I find to be, ingenious and really, really, like, shockingly creative. So yeah, I'm looking forward to doing an episode on Paul, and then maybe an episode on Mary at some point as well, and then an episode on James. It sounds some kind of 1970s folk band or something. But yeah, lots of stuff from early Christianity, and sort of, my kind of take on the historical Mary and Paul and James. And I need to do one on John the Baptizer too, I guess. Yeah, probably need to do one on John the Baptizer, although there's not a lot we can say. So at any rate, lots of early Christianity stuff to come this year as well. What else? Need to do some Gnostic stuff. Need to do some more magic stuff. I don't know. Lots coming up though. But I will say that before I get to the questions, which I will in just a second, I'm going to be making a couple of pit stops here the next month. Next month, I'm going to be going out to Reed Moon's Rare Book Shop over in Provo, in Utah. Now we're going to be doing like a whole weekend of programming, just talking about antiquarian occult books. So he has a fantastic collection. He has one of the only copies of the Lesser Key of Solomon in private hands. So we're going to be doing a whole weekend of programming around esoteric rare books. I mentioned that because this is a copy of Agrippa's 3 Books of Occult Philosophy. This is the JF edition, actually, in English. This is the first and only printing, early modern printing that was done in English. And so I'll be bringing it out, and we'll be talking about early modern or early printing. Here's some cool. I'm sure folks have seen these before, right? These are the famous esoteric alphabets. So this is printed in 1651. This is printed in 1651, beautifully rebound by Matt. Fantastic guy, great DM, great, just a great guy. But rebound by Matt over at Green Dragon Bindery over there in Boston, or near Boston in Massachusetts. So, but at any rate, I'll be over at Reed's Rare Books. I'm sure a lot of folks on here will know Reed Moon, and we'll be talking about antiquarian esoteric books. So that'll be like a whole weekend of Q&As and show and tell and talks and the whole thing. So I'll be doing that in Provo. Let me find the date real fast. And this will all be on the website soon. It'll all be on YouTube soon. Check my calendar. It's like the weekend of March 6th. So weekend of March 6th. So if you're in the Utah area or want to come to the Utah area, to Provo, you can come hang out with us as we talk about antiquarian books. And then the other thing that we'll be doing is I will be in the UK on the 9th. We'll be doing an event in London, and so I'll be joined by really fantastic folks: Marco Visconti, Dr. Angela Puka, Dr. Jenny Butler, and we're going to be talking about sort of doing a whole day of learning around esoteric topics in our respective fields. I think I'm going to do something on Kabbalah, do some Kabbalistic studies, some like in-depth studies in the Zohar. So if you've ever wanted to study the Zohar with me, we'll be in London on April the 8th. Is it April the 8th? Yes, April the 9th. I'll be on April the 9th. I'll be in London, and we'll be doing an all day of learning, and then we're going to go to the pub and hang out and do all that. So, so yeah, look for me in London on April the 9th for a day of learning there. I'll put all this on the channel at some point in the next week or so. So, but yeah, so come hang out in Provo, come hang out in London. It'll be, sounds like a Wesley Willis song, Rock Over Provo, Rock Over London. Yeah, sounds like a Wesley Willis song. But yeah, let's get some questions. Let's hang out. Let's do a couple questions. I don't have a ton of time today, unfortunately, but yeah, I have at least another hour or so to come hang out and do some questions. So let me scroll down here. Yeah, thanks for all the well wishes for the birthday. Like I said, I turned 35, or 45. So getting older, but not old yet. Not yet. All right, let me scroll down and see. Yeah, thanks for all the well wishes. All right. Well, thanks for the. Oh no, I'm sorry to hear that. I'm glad you're doing better. It's terrible. But yeah, thank you for your kind words, and I hope you're doing better. Oh no, it's terrible. Well, I hope you're doing better, and thank you for the super sticker. Thank you for the kind words. Right. So, do I have any hobbies aside from Western Esoterica? I do. In fact, one of the great things about getting a little bit more time here on the channel, where I'm only doing a couple of episodes a month now, is I get to do some of my hobbies, and some of those are going to be trying to get back into doing D&D. I really want to start up another D&D game and DM maybe a D&D game. I want to pick up playing Go again. I used to play Go like religiously, so I really want to pick up playing Go again. I go to the gym, I lift. That's a hobby. I need to get better at going to the gym. I'm pretty consistent, but I need to be more consistent. What else? What hobbies do I have? Calligraphy. I do calligraphy. I do brewing sometimes. Usually in the winter, I brew a sake every winter, so I look forward to brewing some sake. But yeah, a lot of hobbies. So yeah, I'm looking forward to being able to do more of my hobbies now that I have a little bit more time here on the channel. Taking a little bit step back to do some other stuff. So, all right, let me scroll down and see some other questions. We can now see your individual eyebrow hairs. Yeah, that's the glory of 4K. Yeah, I don't know how much it's good that you can see every pore on my nose. Makes me. If I were a different person, maybe it would make me self-conscious, but I don't care about that. So I should probably care more about that, but I don't. But yeah, that's the danger of 4K is you get to see, all the every hair on my beard, which is kind of weird and gross. All right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wonder how many people are actually going to watch in 4K. If it becomes the kind of thing that people really don't use, I may go back just down to like really high quality 1080p. But we'll see. Let's see if I can read this one. Oh yeah, best Goonies character for esoteric treasure hunting party. What Goonie would I bring along? This is the big questions. I think Chunk. Like Chunk, basically, like, every time that they got into like a real situation, and it was actually Chunk that going. Also, he got them into a lot of situations. But yeah, I may have to take Chunk. I like Chunk. Um, um, yeah, I'm gonna go with Chunk. Um, yeah, I'm glad that having had two small children myself, I am glad that my my content has helped you deal with a newborn. My goodness, what helped me with our kids? I sleep trained both of my kids, and so that was a fun experience. But now they sleep. They sleep well. So between must have done something right. I'm not sure. All right. Oh yeah, another episode I want to do is the one on Hittite mythology. I feel like Hittite mythology is super fascinating, especially as an example of like proto of Indo really early Indo-Europeans. And the Hittite mythology, I feel like it doesn't really get the attention it deserves. So I want to do an episode on sort of an overview of Teshub and some of the main characters and Hittite stuff. So could we get some stuff on Eastern esotericism, like Chinese or Japanese or even Indian stuff? The short answer is not from me. And it's not because I wouldn't want to or because I think it's less than or not interesting. It's certainly none of those things. It's just that I don't have any specialization in those areas. I don't read, Middle Chinese. I don't read Japanese. I don't read Sanskrit, and so or Pali. So because I don't have any expertise in those areas, I feel like it's better for me to just not talk on it because there's enough dudes on the internet talking out their ass about stuff they don't know anything about and pretending they're experts. Um, I just don't have any expertise in those areas. I don't even think I have competency, frankly, in those areas. Not even competency. And so I think there's going to be another version of Esoterica hosted by someone who has Middle Chinese and Sanskrit and Pali and Japanese, and they're going to have to make you know Eastern Esoterica. But um, hopefully that person is out there, and hopefully they'll get on YouTube, and hopefully they'll make it, and I'll certainly watch it and certainly learn from it as much as anyone else. So yeah, it's just definitely not because I don't want to do it. It's just because if you don't have competency, and you certainly if, I don't have competency or expertise, and it's just the kind of thing that I don't want to talk about a text at a length where I just can't read the text in the original language at all. If you were to show me the Tao Te Ching in Middle Chinese, I couldn't, aside from recognizing the Chinese character for Dao or something, I can't read it. And I don't feel good about talking about text that I haven't read. And this is a point that I sometimes make. When you say you've read a text, when you've read a translation, you've not read the text. You've read a translation. And it's not the case that we should read everything in the original language all the time. That's not a realistic thing to do. But you should have some competency in it such that when you do get to complicated or problematic areas of the text, that you can consult the original language to some degree. And I feel comfortable, and able to do that in the languages that I work in. I feel like I can sit down with a lexicon and I can get through Coptic, depending on the text, or Greek or Latin. I feel like I have some competency and higher or higher and lower degrees of competency depending on the language, Hebrew, Aramaic, or whatever. But I simply have no competency in Sanskrit or Pali or Chinese or Japanese, and therefore it's not for me to make. It's not for me to make. Never underestimate the power of being able to admit that you don't know stuff, because when you can admit that you don't know stuff, you can start making responsible decisions about what you should do. And I feel like there's a lot of people on the internet who don't know things. What is this Dunning-Kruger effect? That the less competency you have, the more you exaggerate your own competency. If you want to see if you're competent, go take a look at the Tao Te Ching in Middle Chinese, and if you can't read it, then, well, either learn to read it or walk away, and certainly don't pretend any kind of expertise. So that's the reason why. That's the reason why. It's not for lack of want; it's for lack of knowledge. Um, let's see. This is an interesting question. I was wondering if Justin has any antique fine art prints in his collection. The only thing that I have in my collection that's sort of like that is I have a painting that's in the style of I think of David Tenier, who was, I believe, a Flemish painter, and he painted 17th century painter, and he painted a bunch of sort of folk art kind of things, but he also did some alchemical paintings of alchemists sort of in their lab. And I have one that I won at auction. I don't know that it's actually by him. It's certainly in his style, and it sort of has that kind of folk art look to it. But you should probably get it appraised or something. But I won it at an auction, relatively not much. But I do have it. I'm going to hang it up eventually. So, but yeah, I don't have a lot of art. Art is very expensive. At least like fine art. At least fine art. Yeah, we need a Checo Dascoli Conjuring movie. Yeah, definitely. Oops. Yeah, we need to. That'd be cool to have a Checo Dascoli movie. I've heard through the grapevine that his commentary, the astro-necromantic commentary on De Sphera by Sacrobosco is coming out, I believe, and Brian Johnson, who's done a lot of cool translations of necromancy in the Medici Library, did a version of Recension C of the Testament of Solomon. He's working on the text, the astral necromantic commentary of Checo Dascoli on De Sphera Sacrobosco. It's a lot to say, but I think it's coming out later this year. I think via Hadean Press, I believe, is putting it out. I'm looking forward to reading it. It's a cool text because it was actually edited by Lynn Thorndike, who did the History of Magic and Experimental Science and whatever 8 volumes. He edited that, the critical edition of the Latin, and I think I mentioned in Esoterica episode that I did on Checo Dascoli that someone should do a translation of it, just because I've read it, but other people want to read it, because who doesn't like some good old astral necromancy? And yeah, Brian Johnson decided he was going to do it and is doing it. So good for him. Right. Folks may know, one of the things I've upgraded is on the advice of Zevi from Seekers of Unity. I've upgraded my teleprompting game, and this teleprompter is cool because I can actually put the screen right here inside of where the camera is, so I can look right at the screen to look at some of these comments. But the screen is kind of small, and I need to find a way to do the comments slightly differently. All right. This is an interesting question. Do you find, I guess you mean dialectical materialism, to have philosophical or analytical merit? Sorry if it's off topic, or if it's too esoteric for mainstream U.S. politics. Yeah, no, I don't think anyone in U.S. politics is a dialectical materialist. I am a dialectical materialist. I mean, that's the philosophical school that I come out of. Now, I have lots of criticisms of historical examples of dialectical materialism, but I would identify as coming out of that camp. I would identify a lot more with Altheiser's like aleatory materialism. So I'm sort of much more akin to the late Altheiser when it comes to this question, but I would consider myself having come out of that tradition. Now, again, traditions can be, as my teacher James Bowley says, that traditions can be just peer pressure from dead people. And so when traditions are just peer pressure from dead people, we should not follow them. And so I don't slavishly follow in the tradition of Diamat or the kind of everything is a certain kind of contradiction or something like that you see in some of the literature. But yeah, that school of thought has deeply influenced me, and that is the historical materialism is basically the methodology that I use in the channel. So if you like the channel, you might like dialectical and historical materialism. because that is the method that I use. All right. Let's scroll down here and get some more questions. So have I ever done an episode on Swedenborg? No, not yet, but I want to. In fact, the Swedenborg Society actually sent me a big thing of his collected works, actually, which I'm really looking forward to getting into. The reason why I haven't done any content on Swedenborg is, one, I don't know him very well. I know basically just Heaven and Hell. That's the main book that I know. I think that's the main book most people know about Swedenborg. And also, until I do a lot more theosophy, specifically in the tradition of like Jakob Böhme, you can't really appreciate Swedenborg's thought without getting some into the weeds of some theosophy. And by theosophy, I mean the theosophy of Jakob Böhme, and that school of theosophy, not Blavatsky. And I just feel like it's not going to make a lot of sense for me to do Swedenborg content until I do more Jakob Böhme content, which I do want to do. Jakob Böhme is super important. I think Hegel called him the first Germanic philosopher. And so, yeah, I want to do more Böhme content and eventually get to Swedenborg. So, no, fascinating guy. Again, it's one of these characters that really belies the whole idea that faith and reason and mysticism all live in sort of a contradictory relationship. I mean, Swedenborg was a scientist. He was a scientist through and through, worked in mining, and really took a scientific approach to his material. And it was so compelling that even Kant, the early Kant, the pre-critical Kant, had lots of interesting things to say, some of them more or less developed, about Swedenborg. In fact, Kant's first book was on Swedenborg, on the spirit seer. And so he's a super important character, super interesting. Swedenborgian Church, of course, is still around. And yeah, fascinating guy. Definitely want to cover him. It's just a question of building up the chops to get to him, which is a thing that it's going to take a little while to do. But yeah. This is an interesting question. I'm a traditional Catholic, not me, the person who I'm reading, but I read Plotinus and Iamblichus. What path or esoteric route would you recommend for personal growth? I don't know that I could recommend it for personal growth, because I don't know if you mean spiritual growth. That's really outside of my wheelhouse, and it really isn't my place to give anyone spiritual advice, especially someone who's not in my faith tradition. But the Catholic Church the Catholic theology is cut through with Neoplatonism. I mean, you think about people like Pseudo-Dionysius, Maximus the Confessor. I mean, absolutely fascinating character. Origen's also super interesting. So I think what I would recommend, again, if you're interested in sort of intellectual growth from this mystical angle informed by Plotinus and Iamblichus and sort of Neoplatonism, then John Scotus Origena, absolutely fascinating guy. Zevi has a great episode on John Scotus Origena. Maximus the Confessor, and then Pseudo-Dionysius. And of course, that's just if you just got through those three, it'd be huge. It's a ton of material there. So those are the directions I would go if I were a Catholic interested in the intellectual inheritance of folks like Plotinus and Iamblichus and Proclus, etc. Have I heard the song John D by Ghostmane? Yes, it is a hilarious song. Hilarious is not the right word. It is funny hearing a dude rap about John D. It's just like surreal, but great. Do I have a study guide? Yes, I do have a study guide. If you go to my website, justinsledge.com, I have a whole huge study guide that covers sort of like, this is the first text you should read, and then these are the really important secondary texts, and then you sort of zoom into areas of interest, Gnosticism, Hermeticism, magic, or whatever. So it's broke down by read this book first, then read the secondary literature, and then zoom into your own special area of interest. And you can check out that as a study guide. So yes, I do have a study guide. Check out my website and take a look at it. Okay. Yeah, this is sort of the same question. What books for Western esotericism? Yeah, check out the study guide. What I would begin with is Walter Hanegraaff's most recent book, which I have a link to on my study guide, and then jump down to the secondary literature, and then into the more specific secondary literature. So, yeah, thank you so much for the for the super sticker, and thank you for the birthday wishes. I really appreciate that. It's very kind. It's an interesting question. What were the views on Christianity of Proclus and Iamblichus? I don't know that Iamblichus ever mentions Christianity. I imagine he wouldn't have a high opinion of it. We do know that Proclus wrote a book against Christianity. It doesn't survive, unsurprisingly. So yeah, they definitely did not. They didn't like Christianity, or at least Proclus did not like Christianity. And he wrote a book against it. And so we know that. We don't know what the book had in it because it's lost. But yeah, I mean, they were defending what to them was the traditional indigenous religion of Greece. Of course, heavily modified through theurgy and Platonic philosophy. But for them, they weren't Christians and they didn't want to be Christian. And I guess I don't blame them. I think that if they wanted to be pagan and do their own religious / philosophical thing, then they should certainly have been allowed to do that. I don't think that was the opinion of the Christians of the day, unfortunately. And the history is what we all know happened. So, but yeah, I think Proclus had a low opinion of Christianity. Have you ever read The Name of the Rose? Would you ever consider doing an episode on the ideas therein? Yes, I have read In the Name of the Rose, although I have to say that reading Umberto Eco just feels like work. Um, when I want to read a novel, I kind of want to read something that has nothing to do with Western esotericism or the Middle Ages or whatever, because I'm just like in that world, like physically in that world. I'm holding books from that time period. And there's a part of me that when I'm, not doing that, I don't want to do that. And, when I'm reading In the Name of the Rose and he's making a joke in Latin, I'm like, oh God, am I reading Latin at 9:30 at night? Um, so yes, I have read it. And it's great, of course, because it's Umberto Eco. He couldn't, he's just a magisterial writer. Of course, Foucault's Pendulum, I think, is a better book. Although I will say the one thing I don't like about In the Name of the Rose is the way that he depicts Bernard Guy. Um, Guy was in many ways, in the way the book and the movie project him, is sort of a fundamentalist inquisitor who will stop at nothing to root out heresy. And while Bernard Guy was a he was an inquisitor, there's no doubt about that. But in many ways, he represents a more kindler, gentler wing of the Inquisition. Is that a thing? Um, he definitely moderated. He wanted to moderate some of the power of the Inquisition, and certainly he wanted to put guardrails on things like torture. And the way that Guy is depicted in the book, is in the movie especially, is not, I don't think, historically. Um, yeah, it makes Guy look like a monster, and I think that Bernard Guy was a much more complicated character historically. I've done a whole episode comparing Bernard Guy to who I do think was a monster, Nicholas Emmerich, who really was a terrifying inquisitor. Sort of set the stage for Institutor and Kramer and the Malleus Maleficarum. But that's my only beef with the book, is that it kind of portrays Bernard Guy as a much more maniacal character than I think he was in real life. I wouldn't want to get on his bad side as an inquisitor, obviously. I wouldn't want to be an Albigensian or whatever, or a perceived Albigensian. But yep, I've read it, and like I said, it felt like work. And I'm now reading The Secret History, which by Donna Tartt, which I've also people said I need to read, and I'm really really loving it. It's really just a fantastic book so far. So I'm looking forward, and I'm really enjoying The Secret History. I don't know if folks know this about me, but I have a really difficult time reading fiction. I'm not good at reading fiction. And one could argue that everything I read is fiction, and that would be a very cynical thing to argue. But I'm bad at reading literary fiction. It's hard for me. my mind wanders, like in a way that if I'm reading the sermons of Bernardo Clairvaux, my mind doesn't wander. I can keep a pretty sharp focus on this. Um, but for whatever reason, when I start reading narrative fiction, my mind wanders. And so I have a difficult time paying attention to what I'm reading. And which isn't true of like epic poetry. I love reading the Iliad and the Odyssey or the Bhagavad Gita or whatever. I can read that all day long. But there's something about narrative fiction where I find it mentally challenging to read it. Um, and what I will say about reading In the Name of the Rose or reading Umberto Eco or reading Donna Tartt actually is that the material is so well written and has such a high level intellectual content that I'm able to keep much more engaged with it. Um, so yeah, so it's a great book. You know, everyone should read Umberto Eco. I would say that I would recommend Foucault's Pendulum over In the Name of the Rose, but that's just my opinion. Yeah, thank you for the super sticker. I appreciate that. Is it Friday the 13th? Oh, it is Friday the 13th. Well, I need to watch a Jason movie. Definitely gonna do that. I'm gonna pull that up after this before Shabbat. I'm gonna go pull up a Jason movie. I used to love when I was a kid. They had the Saturday night Up All Night. Does anyone remember on USA with Gilbert Gottfried and Rhonda Shear? This is like deep cut memory stuff, and I used to love. And they were heavily censored, which was terrible. But at any rate, they used to love when Friday the 13th would fall on that, and it would be like Gilbert Gottfried and Rhonda Shear like up all night watching Friday the 13th movies, which was just fantastic. I have such great memories of doing that. All right, let me grab a couple of more questions. Yeah, thank you guys for that birthday wishes. All right, here we go. Another question. Let me see if I can pull it up. So during your Kabbalah series, you mentioned that there was a great anti-colonial read of Jesus' exorcism of the Gerasene demoniac that we could get into another time. Think you could get it a little bit now? Yeah, Nick, thank you. I could. It's not super complicated. When Jesus goes into the Transjordan and he's guy mutilating himself and doing all this, he asks the demon what the demon's name is, and this is a very common thing to do in the ancient world, is to you gain some kind of power over learning the name of the demon. And what's weird about this demon is that this demon's name is Legion, and of course the fact that it's an ostensibly Jewish guy, maybe not because he's in the Transjordan, but it's an ostensibly Jewish person being possessed by a legion, by a detachment of whatever, 5,000 Roman soldiers or so. And the fact that Jesus casts this demon or demons, all right, I am legion for we are many. He casts these demons into a bunch of pigs and then they run into the lake and they all die. I think that if I were reading that back in the first century, second century, first century as a Jewish person, is it would be really clear what was going on. It's Jesus encountering the Romans as a demonic force possessing the land, right? As a colonial force possessing the land, and you put them into an unclean animal and then you throw them into the sea, right? And I think what's going on in that text, or what Jesus is telegraphing, as much as this really happened, I don't know if it did historically, but I think what he's basically saying is we're going to throw the Romans into the sea, right? God is going to throw the Romans into the sea. And I think that the way to read that story is, if I were reading it not as a literal story about a demoniac, but as a sort of a colonial critique of the Romans, it's a little on the nose. I mean, the demons could have given any name, but the name they give is, I am Legion, ego eimi legione. I'm like, it's literally, I'm possessed by the Romans, and Jesus throws them into the sea, or throws them into the lake. So I think that's the sort of reading the text as a piece of anti-colonial literature. That's the way that I would read it. Now, did it historically happen? I don't know. I don't know. Why does it happen in the Transjordan? I don't know. That's the strange part of it too. Maybe they put it in the Transjordan, so that it would be a little less on the nose, you know. But early Christians were good at encoding anti-Roman sentiment into the text. I mean, the book of Revelation, the Apocalypse of John, is in many ways, one of the things that it is a decisively anti-Roman, anti-Neronian document that talks really about the end of the world as the end of the Roman Empire and the conquest of the resurrected Jesus. So, and the whole 666 thing is clearly gematria for Nero's name. So the Christians were good at hiding anti-Roman sentiment in their text, and that tradition goes all the way back to the Qumran folks, right, with the war of the sons of light versus the sons of darkness, and all the business about the Kittim, which are just a code name for the Romans. So, thank you for the birthday wishes. Thank you, buddy. Oh yeah, hey man, thank you. I really appreciate that. Great seeing. The screen's a little small, so I don't immediately recognize folks, but I really appreciate that. This is a fun one. If I paid for your trip, would you break into the Neo-Pythagorean cathedral recently found in Rome and make a video for all of us before you're imprisoned by the Swiss guard, of course? You have to pay me a lot of money to B&E at the Vatican. These are not the days of Dan Brown novels, and I'm not trying to be in a Dan Brown. That's not true. I am trying to be in a Dan Brown novel. Let's be honest, folks. I'm like halfway to being in The Ninth Gate and some Dan Brown novel. This is my life. Yeah, I haven't heard about this Neo-Pythagorean cathedral found in Rome. I haven't. If you have a link, an archaeological link, put it in the chat. I haven't heard about this, but I certainly would love to go in any Neo-Pythagorean cathedral. I mean, what cathedral isn't Neo-Pythagorean, right? I mean, like what structure in the Western world isn't at some level downstream of the kind of sacred geometry and ideas developed by Pythagoras and the folks that are influenced by Pythagoras? It's just hard to imagine a non-Pythagorean cathedral or any sacred building not having sort of deeply mathematical mysticism built into the structure. There's a great medieval book about this that goes into all of the. We owned it. We had it. We sold it. That I don't know if it's translated in English, but it just goes through like every one of these. Why are there 3 of this and 8 of this, and why is Windows divided this way and that way? And as you can imagine, every single thing in a cathedral is just like pregnant with meaning, sacred meaning, and so unsurprisingly, like I said, I don't. What sacred building isn't Pythagorean at some level? All right. Keep scrolling down. Yeah, this is a text I also want to cover at some point. Is the text I can never pronounce. It's like such a mouthful. The Hypnotomachia Polyphily, probably the most beautiful book printed in the Renaissance, printed by Aldus Manutius, the famous Aldine Press. You see it actually if you come to the New York Book Fair. You can see first, second, and third editions of it. And I've held a first edition of it, which is it's a $2 million book. Even a second and third editions are 6-figure books, but I've held a couple of them, and they are just magnificently beautiful books. Well worth getting in a high quality facsimile if you can. But yeah, this is a book I should cover. It's overlaps with all the interests of mine, right? Of antiquarian books and esotericism, and there's definitely like some hermetic sort of Renaissance hermeticism stuff in there. So yeah, this is a book that I definitely should come back and cover at some point soon. So yeah, no doubt about it. I'll definitely get to it. So much esotericism, so little time. Sixth attempt. Wow, sixth attempt at bribing Dr. Sledge into taking a Koine Greek class to make a video on the Eastern Church Fathers. Yeah, again, this is just a place where I just don't know a ton. And I mean, I can read Koine okay. I read Greek okay. It's actually gotten a lot worse in the past several years. my Greek used to be better in many ways than my Latin because I spent a lot of years studying Greek philosophy. So I was just knee deep and reading Stoics and reading the SVF and really getting into Stoicism and of course Christianity. But my Greek has really suffered because I've gotten so much more into Latin these days because of where I'm studying. But yeah, maybe at some point I'll switch over and do the Eastern Fathers. You can't see it on here, but I have like the big. I don't know if I can. No, I don't want to do that. But I have the big collection ante-Nicene set that goes from Polycarp all the way over to Augustine. But yeah, I need to eventually get over to the Eastern Fathers at some point. I have the beard for it, um, so yeah, I need to do that, but I'm not sure when. I'm not sure when. Hopefully, life is long. Hey, Friday RC, it's good to see you, man. It's good to see you. I really appreciate the super sticker. Yeah, well, I'm curious to see how the Austin Esoterica, the Nokian Con is coming. I'm not sure I'll be able to make it, but we should talk about it. I'm not sure if I can make it or not, but I hope it's coming well, and hope you're doing well. Hope you're enjoying beautiful British Columbia. It's one of the I got to go out there and give a talk on Nokian topics last year with really wonderful folks. Had a lot of fun. Got to hang out with Aaron Leach, a real great guy. It was just a lot of fun. It was a great and well put together event. Fantastic stuff. Another super sticker. Thank you for for the super sticker. All right, let me scroll down. I hope I'm not missing much, and I'm sure I am. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad that I can spur your interest in esotericism. That's kind of the whole bag around here. I don't have any esoteric secrets myself, but my great hope, and I think the hope of any educator, is to just to spur you on to study the stuff yourself. At the end of the day, you're never gonna have a better teacher than you. You're never gonna have a better teacher than you, and because any teacher that's not you is you're gonna have to internalize. And so I always tell people that at the end of the day, what you need to really focus on is bettering yourself, and hopefully I can inspire folks to do that. Because I certainly don't have any answers, at least not spiritual answers. And if you want those, you're going to have to find them on your own. Yeah, happy belated birthday. Um, yes. So yes, sorry, Possum. I do have those. Yes, we do have 2 spots. I will send you a link to that. I know you sent me. My email situation is terrible, which is why I'm hiring an admin, because I desperately need an admin to help me with my all the admin things I have to do. But yes, those tickets are reserved, and I will get back to you hopefully today. I'll get back to you this afternoon. Would you recommend the Greek magical papyri for piercing together a practice? I can't say, because I'm not a practitioner of this material, and so I can't say yay or nay that I would recommend them. What I could say is that from a historical point of view, I don't know that you can really understand magical practice in the Western world without having some understanding of them. There's new editions of them coming out too, so you don't have to rely on the Betts edition, which is now looking increasingly dated. But if you're really interested in the Greek magical papyri, I'll be looking at some of the new translations coming out, and I would also check out the work of Dr. Kirsten Switza, who's doing some of the best work on the Greek magical papyri out there. I think her website's Antiki Magic. I bet someone knows her website. If you know her website, if you don't mind grabbing it, throw it in the chat. But she's fantastic. She's fantastic. All right. Cover those questions. All right, folks, I'm just looking through the list here. Let's see if I can zoom this in a little bit because I can't quite see the questions very well. So let me see. I'm going to change the setting really fast. Hopefully this doesn't break anything. Sorry, folks, I'm learning to use my own stuff. That did not make it any better. Somehow it made it worse. Okay, 1 second, guys. Okay, there we go. All right, let's scroll down and get some more questions. The scrolling's not working. What the deuce? There we go. This is an interesting question about would you be willing to be would you be interested in making a video on the botanical sides of things used in rituals? You know, this is the thing I'm really interested in, but it's a thing that I don't feel comfortable doing for 2 reasons. One, I don't have an expertise in botany, and so you know, it just because I don't have an expertise in botany, I wouldn't feel comfortable trying to talk about the plants because I don't know much about them. Um, and then second, there's a translation issue. A lot of the names for a lot of the plants in medieval and especially in Greek literature, we don't know what the plants even are. There's this, it's just sort of a guess what these plants are. And I think of the most famous example being in the Kephalos ritual. There's a plant called the contritis root. And we don't know what this word contritis means. We don't know what this root is. And people have speculated what it might be, but none of us know. And even by the Middle Ages, you see these sort of like Galen will have plants listed, and none of those plants are available because it's in like a Mediterranean environment, and they're writing in Germany, and so they sub out plants, and it's just a game of telephone. It's just a game of telephone, and given that linguistic issue, I don't feel comfortable with it, just because linguistically, I think that there are lots of pitfalls. Um, and then thirdly, I don't think I'd be comfortable talking a lot about the specifics of this material because I think a lot of people are interested in trying this stuff. And and I know that some of the botanicals used, for instance, in flying ointments, right? This is stuff like henbane and belladonna. This is the lethal stuff. And I just feel like from a uh, safety point of view, it's just not safe. It's not safe because all it takes is for one person to think they know better than people who know really all about this, and they go out and they get henbane and they make some flying ointment, and now they have a convulsion, and they God forbid die or something. So I'm there's an expertise question that I don't think I have. There's a safety question. There's a translation question, and I think that when I look at all three of those combined, I just don't feel comfortable doing that. I just don't feel comfortable doing it. Um, so that's sort of a long answer for I think a really good question about that. And even when I've covered some of these like flying ointments and some other stuff, for instance, in Delaporta's Natural Magic book, I even felt the need to blur them out, right? Just blur out the text, and people can go find it if they want to, obviously. But I just feel like it's dangerous. A lot of these compounds contain deliriants. I mean, they're not hallucinogenics. They're deliriants. I mean, they're more akin to like PCP. And I just don't feel super safe giving people access to something like that. You know, and this is a case where curiosity can certainly kill the cat. So yeah, that's not the kind of thing that I would want to do. Just for like I said, there's an expertise question, there's a safety question, there's a linguistics question. And when you look at all three of those with any degree of scrutiny, I think the answer becomes probably not, at least for me. Maybe other people would feel differently about that. All right, folks, let's scroll down and get a couple more questions. Yeah, thank you for the comments on the sweater. My wonderful wife got it for me. Yeah, thank you for sharing your passion and knowledge with us. Of course, this is like, again, any educator. This is any educator's dream. Is to have 500 people on a live stream talking about Kentriti's roots and the Greek magical papyri. Yeah, this is any educator's dream, is to have a large audience and be able to talk about your intellectual passion, and people want to learn with you. And there's no greater feeling for me than knowing that there are people out there that I can make an episode on Proclus, and 7 paragraphs of Proclus, a 40-minute episode, and it gets tens of thousands of views, right? 60,000 people or whatever watch it. That's just makes me feel like $1,000, maybe $10,000. I don't know how many bucks, a lot of bucks. And so, no, it's my honor, it's my privilege, it's my vocation, it's really my calling to do this work, and I'm just extremely grateful that I get to do it, and I get to do it with and for such amazing people. So thank you. Do I think that Josephus was a reliable historian, or was he simply indebted to the Romans? Yeah, I think Josephus can be trusted about as far as you can throw him. I think Josephus is always out for number one, and out for number one means he's out to make Josephus look good. But I think that he's, again, he's reasonably reliable from what I understand of historians. I don't think he should be trusted in every respect, and I'm not going to die on the hill of something Josephus said, but I think he's reasonably reliable. And there's even recent arguments that I saw on Andrew's channel, Religion for Breakfast, where there's a scholar whose name I can't remember, but makes arguments that even the what is it called, the Flavian sections that mention Jesus may be authentic. They may not be interpolations by later Christians. They may be authentic, and they may be a lot more sarcastic than we've realized. So even those sections on Jesus could be authentically Flavian, Josephine. I don't know. But yeah, I think of him as a relatively reasonably reliable historian. But again, again, am I going to die on the hill of Josephus or Thucydides or whatever? No, I'm not. But he's certainly better than what we have otherwise, which is basically nothing. So at least for the Jewish wars and stuff. All right. This is an interesting question. It's a popular current topic in the quantum physics world to look for a unifying model that includes consciousness. Do you have an opinion on this? I have the most deflationary. Deflationary theory. I think consciousness is probably not really real. I think that I agree with the Churchlands and the other Dennett, maybe to a significant degree, that all of our theories of consciousness are folk psychology. There is no rigorous theory of consciousness, and that in the same way that it's not a scientific category. So I'm not sure that consciousness is really real. I think that the things that we call consciousness are probably internally incoherent. So I would just be uninterested in any theory of quantum mechanics that includes consciousness, because I'm not even sure that it's real. But yes, this is a hot take. This is a position that I know is unpopular, but yeah, I'm kind of a relativistic when it comes to consciousness. I'm pretty convinced by Paul and Patricia Churchland that we don't have any robust metaphysical or physical reasons to think that this thing, the thing that we call consciousness, is in fact it obtains veridically. But yes, I know that's a hot take. And I know also people are going to say, well, that's a performative contradiction. The very thing saying that it's the very thing that you're saying isn't really real, is doing the thing, is causing the thing to allow you to think that. Yeah, that's what they would say in the Middle Ages too about the soul. And the soul also, the soul, strictly speaking, the anima, that also has fallen now into the realm of spirituality, and not into the realm of science and metaphysics, at least not contemporary scientific metaphysics. So So I think that it is actually less performative contradiction than one might think. But yes, I know I definitely know that, like I said, my position on limited materialism is uh, is controversial, which is fine. All right. This is a question on Swedenborg. Which metal bands do I listen to? And I answered the Swedenborg question. What metal bands do I listen to? I've been listening to a lot of Panopticon. I've been listening to a lot of Black Parade, listening to Wolves in Throne Room, listen to like Dark Throne, like old school, like second generation black metal. Yeah, I listen to sort of that, a lot of that sort of atmospheric black metal stuff. That's kind of my jam. I've been listening to a little bit less of that. What have I listening to recently? It's funny. I've been listening like now that I'm writing Esoterica episode. I've listened to like old school video game music, like chiptune stuff. Like it kind of makes writing kind of feel like a video game. Um, but yeah, most of the metal I listen to is atmospheric black metal stuff. Trying to think of the most recent black metal record I've been listening to a lot. Yeah, I listened to the new Black Parade record a lot, and it's pretty good. Thank you, Vishanti. It's lovely. Always appreciate getting the Hebrew happy birthday. Thank you, Vishanti. I always get curious if I should use real people's real names on things, but I feel like more safe. I don't like to out a person's name unless they want me to. All right, let me scroll down. Yes. Do I plan on making an episode about esotericism in the LDS church? Yes. I don't know when it's going to happen. I've been threatening it for years, and I have several like LDS folks who follow me, who want me to do it, and I want to do it too. It's just a question of getting the time to get into it. Also, I want to do stuff like that with like a pretty light touch. The LDS church is full of believers, and I don't want to like insult anyone's faith. And I have a lot of respect for for LDS folks, and want to honor their faith traditions, and because I know they get lampooned a lot, and I think it's really unfair. People are like, oh, ha, ha, Joseph Smith found a bunch of gold plates in the forest. I'm like, is it any stranger than anything else people believe? Faith wise. So yes, I do want to do an episode on LDS esotericism and the Jupiter amulets and stuff, and all the rituals and all the things that go into that. I'm actually going to visit Kirtland, Ohio at some point soon. I have my extended family lives in over in Cleveland, and next time I go down to Cleveland, I'm going to jump over to Kirtland and go see some of the cool LDS stuff over there. And also, when I go out to Provo, Reed Moon has one of the most incredible collections of LDS material. In fact, he has Brigham Young's copy of the Book of Mormon, first edition copy of the Book of Mormon, owned by Brigham Young. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. But yeah, LDS stuff is like always eternally fascinating to me. Yeah, thank you for the birthday wishes. Yeah, maybe you can make it to London and we can all hang out. I'm looking forward to getting over there. Okay. Assuming Jesus didn't literally come back from the dead. It's a big assumption. I think there would be some folks that will question that. When do you think his post-resurrection teachings, like the Pistis Sophia or the Sophia of Jesus Christ, happened during his did they happen during his historical lifetime? Definitely not. No, definitely not. I think Jesus's teachings were very much the teachings of the historical Jesus were very much not Gnostic. They were apocalyptic. And I think that, the Pistis Sophia and these other Gnostic texts are incredibly interesting. But and maybe the Gospel of Thomas records some sayings of Jesus that are authentic, historically authentic. Who knows? Um, but no, the stuff in the Pistis Sophia and the Apocrypha of John are clearly written, well after Jesus is dead and or resurrected, including the Pistis Sophia, which is even a bit later text. Well, usually thought of as to be a bit later. But no, I don't think that Jesus ever taught anything like. I think he would be absolutely bewildered. The historical Jesus would not make heads or tails of Pistis Sophia. I think it'd be probably as confusing to him as it is to us. Maybe even more confusing. Maybe even more confusing. But all right. Yeah. Yeah, this should mention this. The AJC's, the Apostolic Johannine Church, is hosting me in May, and I'm going to be there giving a talk at their conclave, which is a lot of fun. I gave one on Valentinian Gnosticism, specifically Demiurge, last year, and I had a lot of fun. Really, really kind, lovely people. And this year, I'm going to be doing a talk on the divine feminine, specifically the development of the Shekhinah in the Kabbalah, and how it is sort of how the divine feminine is sort of develops in the Hebrew Bible, and then a little bit about how it develops specifically in the 13th century in the rise of Kabbalah, and really in dialogue with the development of the Marian cult in Spain, and how in order to understand the development of the divine feminine and the Shekhinah and the Kabbalah, we also have to understand the development of the rise of the Marian cult in medieval Spain. So that'll be a fun conversation, sort of to talk about, the divine feminine, and also, there's some what are often thought to be echoes, maybe, of a kind of Gnosticism in the Sefer Bahir, where the Sefer Bahir picks up this whole idea of the woman and the queen in exile. And this is often associated with Sophia, and it may be a distant echo of kind of Apocryphon of John type material that shows up in the Sefer Bahir. And of course, the Sefer Bahir is the first real book of Kabbalah. So that'll be a fun talk. It'll be an esoteric episode as well, but it'll be great to give the actual talk at the AJC over in Calgary. Also looking forward to seeing the Rocky Mountains on the Canadian side, because I've never seen them on that side of things. All right, let's go a little faster. Just because I have gonna get to the afternoon. Any more practical alchemy content on the channel? Yeah, definitely. You can see. Can you see in the background? Those are my alembics. Yeah, they're gonna put those to use, and I'm just gonna sit on the shelf. So yeah, in fact, when I had that alembic made, I had 3 of them made. One for or for food grade stuff, one for not food grade stuff, and then one in case one of them inevitably breaks. So I have 3 of those alembics, and yeah, I'm definitely going to put them to work, at least when the weather gets a little better, so I can be outside, because you don't want to be doing stuff with like metal alchemy inside your house. So, do I believe in aliens with capital ALI? Yes, I think it's likely that they're extraterrestrials. I think it is likely for the same reasons. I think it is likely that there are extraterrestrials. I think for the same reason we will never encounter them, and they will never encounter us, and they never have. I don't think we're going to get to I don't think human beings will even reach our nearest star. We'll ever get to Proxima Centauri. So I think for the very same mathematical reasons that I do think there are extraterrestrials, I think for the same reasons, I think that we'll never encounter each other. So yeah. Yeah, I think we're going to be alone as a species for the foreseeable future, maybe forever. The universe is getting bigger every minute. if you're interested in ancient theurgy, you should definitely check out my reading list, because I have a whole reading list just about ancient theurgy and Neoplatonism. So check out that reading list on my website. All right. All right, get a couple more questions here. What do I think about tattoos? I don't have any strong opinion about tattoos. I would just highly encourage people that if you're going to get a tattoo in a language you don't understand, one, I would just say you shouldn't do that. You should just not get tattoos in languages that you don't have fluency in. I have seen so many misspelled, upside down, backwards Hebrew tattoos. I've seen tattoos where people have tried to spell stuff and tell me it's Aramaic, but it's just like spelled in English and Hebrew. It's terrible. So I would just not get tattoos in languages you're not fluent in. And that's it, basically. I mean, it's not for me to govern what people do with their bodies. If you want to turn your body into a cool tattoo work of art, more power to you. I would just really recommend you not get tattoos in languages you're not fluent in, because you can really look, you can permanently embarrass yourself. Yeah, I don't know. There's like some part of me that like cringes knowing out there that there are people with like tattoos in Hebrew that are just backwards, whatever. But yeah, I mean, there's a great, I saw a great TikTok or YouTube reel or something of a woman who speaks Mandarin Chinese, and she just reads people's tattoos, and it is really bad, really bad. All right. Do I have any insights about insightful thoughts on gematria? Do I have anything smart to say about gematria? I would warn anyone who is on the obsessive compulsive scale of things to never do any gematria. The one place where I've seen people develop serious mental health stuff, vis-a-vis Kabbalah, is people who get really into gematria and they start to see numbers everywhere, and sort of they get into like Darren Aronofsky pi territory. So I would say that if you have bad stuff with OCD, and I mean like real OCD, I really would warn you against it, because I've seen it have pretty dire consequences. If you want a cool commentary on the Torah that uses a lot of gematria, there's a commentary called by a guy named the Baal HaTurim, the Master of the Rose. The Turim is the thing that the high priest wore, the breastplate. And his commentary, unfortunately, is famous because he uses a lot of gematria. And so I always tell people that if you really want to see gematria in use, go look at the commentary on the Torah of the Baal HaTurim. But any specific instance of gematria that I don't, I'm not a big gematria person. I'm not sitting around, reading the Torah with a gematria calculator or gematria dictionaries. Yeah, it's neat, I guess, but I'm not really into it. I guess I don't like it because it's too clever. I'm very skeptical of clever things. Like when I read Derrida, when he makes some weird pun in French that requires you to like bracket out half the word and then read it, I'm like, this is clever. And when I use the word clever, it almost always mean it negatively. It's somehow smart without substance, and sometimes I feel the gematria stuff is somehow smart without substance. It's like it's like I said, it's merely clever. So I'm not a big fan of gematria stuff. But if you are, and there's perfectly good reasons to be a fan of gematria, then you should take a look at the commentary of the Baal HaTurim. I think Art Scroll has a copy of it. It's a bit of a pity though, because now he's known for that. Although he wrote perfectly normal commentaries in the Torah, but now people just read the gematria stuff. In fact, I think it's just the gematria stuff now that people know, and so now he's thought of as kind of the gematria guy. Although that was just a one thing that he did. So be careful, being the gematria guy, because it might be the only thing that you get known for. So yeah, if you want to go take a look at a cool commentary with lots of gematria, then the Baal HaTurim has. He's your guy. Thank you. Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing the episode on Paul too. Angela, Dr. Puka is in the chat. Yeah, folks need to make sure to check out Dr. Angela Puka's channel, especially if you're interested in more contemporary stuff. You know, here at Esoterica, I mostly cover stuff basically up to about 1750. And Dr. Puka does stuff into the contemporary period, and covering paganism and shamanism and more contemporary occult stuff, and some cool she is training also in philosophy as well, and does some really cool sort of the sort of intersection of philosophy and contemporary occultism stuff that is really, really great. I still haven't had the chance to read her or watch her video on quantum mechanics and esotericism, although I have a feeling at what position she'll land on. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm looking forward to watching it because I think that's an endlessly fascinating misuse of quantum mechanics. Yeah, I've done lots of episodes on non-Abrahamic stuff. So yeah, lots of stuff on Greek stuff, Egyptian stuff, lots of content there. Will I do more William Blake? Yes, eventually. I don't know when. Yeah, I'll do some more William Blake. I don't know when. I want to do something on his concept of Newton. I'd love to do an episode on the Proverbs of Hell, or what's it called? The Proverbs of Hell. What is it called? Not the Marriage of Heaven and Hell, but I think that's the Proverbs are in there. But yeah, eventually definitely want to do something on Willie B, but I'm not sure when. Ever planning to do something on Nostradamus? Yes, I need to do something on Nostradamus. I don't know why I haven't gotten him yet. I feel like, why haven't I covered Nostradamus yet? Maybe I have like a Nostradamus hangover from when I was a kid. There was like constantly Nostradamus shows where like he predicted Hitler because he wrote a thing about the Hister River and it's really Hitler, or he wrote about Apollyon, but really he's talking about Napoleon, and it was all this sort of, there was a lot of that content being made when I was a kid, and it always, when I was watching it as a kid, it always struck me as like really badly done, like really like yeah, it's just like you had to squint and look sideways at it to make it fit, Hitler or Napoleon or whatever. And so it all struck me as silly, and I guess I've inherited that. I've maintained that bias into adulthood, so maybe I just need to shake off my own childhood bias and give Nostradamus a more honest shake. So yeah, it's a good reason to do it. All right. So I already answered some of these questions. Getting married in October. Any favorite underrated, largely forgotten Jewish wedding traditions? Also, I've heard. Thank you. One of the things that my wife and I did that I felt was really meaningful was actually doing the Tanaim as a separate ceremony. Often Tanaim just get rolled into, Kedushin and the whole thing with Ketubah, and I feel like actually having a formal betrothal with conditions. Tanaim means conditions. It's a cool way. It's a cool exercise, and again, I'll do props to my wife for really focusing on this. It's a way of really hashing out what your values are and what you're kind of like, what you're signing up for, because the ketubah really lays out the rights and privileges of each party, it basically through the marriage and if a divorce happens. But Tanaim are a really interesting statement of sort of what kind of values both of you share in common. And this can just be a very interesting place to draw up a document where you kind of talk about your, what kind of things do you value in a relationship. And it can be revelatory. It can be really revelatory. And then sort of actually having a ceremony where you say, we're signing off on these, and this is like our formal betrothal. So I feel like making a Tanaim ceremony a separate thing with a lot of intentionality is a pretty cool thing. We did our Tanaim like that. We have it hung up in our dining room, It looks like a page of Gemara, actually, of the Talmud. And it's a cool document. It's a cool document. So, ketubas are cool. Everybody likes a good ketuba, but I would say really look into doing an actual Tanaim. I think it's it's well worth doing. But yeah, Mazal Tov. Have a great wedding, and hope that little piece of advice is helpful. All right, let me scroll down a little bit. All right, let's see. Since I've done episodes on Kant and Schopenhauer, I'm gonna do an episode on Nietzsche. Why not? Why not? Nothing terribly. I mean, aside from Nietzsche being obscure, there's nothing terribly esoteric about him. But yeah, I could do an episode on Nietzsche. Maybe on his concept of amor fati. So I feel like this is a place where people, the Ubermensch is an interesting character, because of all the stuff that that comes along with the 20th century. But Nietzsche gives basically one test for evaluating whether or not a person is in fact an Ubermensch, and it's sort of this demonic tester comes in and diagnoses whether or not the would-be Ubermensch has a true amor fati, and it's a kind of neat, a neat package of what an Ubermensch is, and do you have amor fati, and what's the other thing I was going to say? Oh, the eternal turn, the eternal return. And so it kind of is a neat package of lots of Nietzschean things all rolled into one. So maybe I'll do one on the Ubermensch and that, because a lot of people think that they're Ubermenschen, but they're just wrong. Basically, if you think you're an Ubermensch, you're not one, and if you definitely not an Ubermensch if you learned about it in a book. I guarantee you that if you think that you're Ubermensch because you read a book and you like read a Nietzsche book and now you think you're an Ubermensch, you are demonstrably not an Ubermensch. Ubermenschen don't read books. I don't think they do, at least. I would know what they do because I'm not one. I'm definitely not an Ubermensch. I don't want to be one. The blonde beasts. All right. Ever thought about talking about real world parallels of popular myths, i.e., the possibility of the Garden of Eden being an allegory about the consequences of the agricultural revolution? I mean, I probably wouldn't do that because I think it's just so speculative. I'm very slow to try to see what's back behind, you know, a particular myth. I think it's just like it's a hermeneutical exercise more than it is a like really exegetical one. Like I said, I gave the example of Jesus and the Legion stuff. That one's just so on the nose that that it kind of reads itself in many ways. But yeah, I think that that kind of work is far more hermeneutical interpolation than it is exegesis, and I think it can be neat. I think it can be smart. Even it can be cool. You can get neat stuff out of it. But I think that interpolating those stuff back into the text, unless you're doing a lot of disclaiming, is pretty intellectually dishonest. And you see a lot of people do this. This is a pretty common thing. If I weren't Jewish, what would be my plan B religion? Zoroastrianism. Definitely be a Zoroastrian. I might jump ship anyway and be a Zoroastrian. No, I would be a Zoroastrian. In fact, we have a friend of ours, it's a person we know in town, and she's Zoroastrian. And like every time I talk to her, I'm like, you got to be more Zoroastrian. Like you have such a cool religion. So I think if I weren't Jewish, I'd be Zoroastrian, maybe Mendean. But they don't take converts. I don't think Zoroastrians really do either. I think if I had to jump ship into Mendeanism or Zoroastrianism. That is cool religions to me. Happy 45th. Thank you very much. Yeah, your turn in a few months. Well, congratulations. Yeah, well, thank you so much. Is it Swiss francs? CHF Swiss francs. Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's very kind of you. But yeah, happy early birthday. Wish you um, wish you a great 45. Mine's going good so far. Uh, you know, 3 days in. 3 days in. All right, folks. Let me scroll down a little bit more and make sure I'm getting any super stickers and stuff, or just any questions. I'll try to get all the questions I can. All right. Yeah, the Reza Aslan book Zealot is okay, although he just recapitulates a lot of stuff that was done in the 20th century German scholarship. So it's kind of one of those books that I don't know. It kind of felt like he rewrote two other books, but it's okay. I think that yeah, um, I'm less convinced of that. Yeah, this is the thing I want to do. Do I want to do more high production videos? And the short answer is yes. I just need to learn to use this camera. This is a Sony FX30. It's really a cinematic camera. And I don't know how to use it. I don't know really anything about cinema or making movies or whatever. So I think what I want to do is hire a local person to kind of like take me out and just show me how to like frame a shot, do good lighting, do this, do that. But yeah, I want to or work with my buddy Andy over at Etache Films because I'd like to learn to do a little bit more documentary style stuff. But I just don't know how to do it, because I don't know anything about film. So yeah, I definitely want to. It's just a question of learning how to do it, but I want to do it. Like I want to do a little documentary about the New York Book Fair because I feel like it's super cool. It's one of my favorite things in the whole year, and so I'd love to do like a documentary, sort of like how do you find esoteric books at the New York Book Fair, which is a neat question, or a fun question to me at least. All right. Okay, let me scroll down. Seems like a little far away. I need to find a way of like disentangling the comments so I can read them a little better. That's a great question about esotericism and the Belle Epoque. The short answer is not really. I don't really work in that time period. That's the sort of time period of Aleph Alavi and the rise of early theosophy and stuff. Mathers and stuff, I guess, over there in Paris. But I just don't know a lot about that time period. I don't work in the 19th century. And so I don't know a ton about the 19th century occult revival and that, maybe more than the average bear, but certainly not enough to say much about it. So no, I don't have any great recommendations on that time period because I just don't work in that time period and I don't know a ton about it. I think there is a book out called like Occult Paris that deals with some of that stuff, I think. Sorry, I was looking. Yeah, there's a book called Occult Paris. I'm looking at it. It's on my shelf. It's over there. That will deal with some of that material. So maybe check that book out. I haven't read it. I have it on my shelf, but I haven't read it. So that's what I would recommend. And I'm sure if the book is good, I'll have a good bibliography and it'll be good. I imagine a lot of that material is also in French. So, but sorry, I don't have better advice for you. Well, I'll do a video on alchemical magical origins of the LDS faith. Yep, I talked about this. Yeah, definitely we'll do one on, I don't know if alchemy has much to do with the LDS faith, but definitely we'll do something about the intersection of the LDS faith and Western esotericism. Excuse me. Ever read the PGM? Never read the PGM. Ah, look at Philip. Thanks, Philip. It's good to see you. So you've been traveling, man. You're like in the Gulf, like in Oman and stuff. I hope you're having a great time traveling. Send my best to your wonderful SO, and hope your travels have been safe and rich and productive. It's great to know you, Philip. Folks, Let's Talk Religions, fantastic channel, especially if you're interested in esoteric Islam, Sufisms. Philip is really an expert in that material, and I always learn a lot when I watch his content, especially on the Sufism stuff, which I don't know a lot about, but excellent stuff. Did a really great episode recently on Nicholas of Cusa. Absolutely wonderful channel. Wonderful guy too. Philip's just like a great combination of very learned person and very humble person. Just really, again, one of the great things about this channel, folks, is that I've gotten to meet just some of the best people. Dana Trell, Philip, Angela, Zevi, just so many people that I've gotten to meet who just have universally almost turned out to be just some of the best people, smart, caring, thoughtful, collegial people, in a way that when I was actually in academia, so many people were bad, like petty and mean and vindictive and territorial. And it was like this world that I was like, why are these people so angry and mean? And when we think of the internet, right, it's like this full of just like mean people, trolls and bad people, whatever. But, I've met so many people through doing Esoterica that I've gotten the pleasure of becoming friendly with, that are just absolutely wonderful people. So Philip is certainly on that list. Angela, Dan, just lots of people. So there's a question about what are your D&D games like? I did DM. Do you homebrew? What sorts of campaigns do you go for? The last time I only was able to do D&D until the pandemic hit. Then everything got shut down. In fact, we were at the very beginning of the third act of a year-long campaign. Long time. We've been playing for a while. Nothing compared to my buddy Matt, who's been running a AD&D table for a generation. Super impressive. But we were like very beginning of third act, and COVID shut us down. And I got so involved in Esoterica, I wasn't able to continue doing D&D. Or rather, I should take better responsibility and say that I didn't prioritize it in the way that I should. I think it's important to take responsibility for the things that you do and don't do. So I didn't prioritize it in the way that I should have, and I want to redo that. But I was playing 5th edition. I like 5th edition. I grew up on AD&D, and 5th edition, just the mechanics of it were really intuitive and made a lot of sense to me. But this was before they had ported Planescape to 5th edition, and so basically I was playing Planescape, but my own homebrew port of Planescape to 5th edition. Now they've ported Planescape to 5th edition, so maybe I would switch over to that. But yeah, we were playing basically a version of that, and I was just able to like incorporate a bunch of stuff from the days where I grew up and playing AD&D. I included some Spelljammer stuff, which is just like peak 80s. You can like hear the hair metal in the background. But Planescape, Spelljammer, some Dark Sun stuff, and that's the kind of stuff I grew up on, and I could never afford all the books, and now I can afford many of the books. That's the kind of stuff I was running. And so, it was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to getting back into it and getting back to DMing. Cause I just love it. It's a lot of fun, and, adults need social spaces. And we need spaces where imagination is how you solve problems, because, a lot of us, our imaginations are really, an organ that atrophies greatly. And so I'm looking forward to getting back into D&D. Super, super healthy, really fun, really positive, part of my life that I miss, and I want to get back into it. Hank Green collaboration. I never collaborated with Hank. I did a thing on SciShow about alchemy, but I don't think Hank was directly involved in that. I don't know if Hank is involved in that at all. But no, I haven't worked with either of the Green brothers. I'd love to, but I haven't. You may be thinking of Dr. Andrew Henry, but I didn't. But I would like to. Fredericksburg, Virginia. Pretty important battle happened there. The Civil War, folks. All right. Thank you for the super sticker. Very kind of you. The trick to getting super stickers is to have a birthday. Wow, okay. So many questions. There's a lot of great questions. This is a great question. The intersection of humor and spirituality always fascinates me. Yeah, me too. Is humor appreciated much in Western esoteric texts? I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, a lot of these texts take themselves really seriously, and I kind of get why they take themselves so seriously. I'm trying to think of a good esoteric text that has some like jokes in it that's more playful. I mean, Paracelsus is kind of playful. You know, Paracelsus calls people names and like he's like so and so is a Scheitskopf and stuff, and he's always calling people like butthead and stuff. So it's kind of funny, like in the sense that you're kind of laughing at Paracelsus or laughing with him as he insults people. Martin Luther does that too, actually. It's kind of a German thing to do, is call people like poop head and stuff. So Paracelsus can be funny. He has a biting sense of humor. It's pretty sarcastic. Agrippa sometimes can be a little sarcastic, which is kind of nice. But yeah, a lot of these texts take themselves overly seriously, I think. You know, you don't see much of humor in Plotinus, which is a pretty good indicator if something's wrong, to my mind. If you can't take yourself with at least a grain of salt, I shouldn't take you terribly seriously. Um, but I'm trying to think of any other esoteric texts where they're definitely messing with us. I mean, the Rosicrucian pamphlets also clearly like, you know that I know that you know, there's some kind of fourth wall breaking stuff in the Rosicrucian pamphlets. Um, Some Gnostic stuff, any funny stuff in there? I mean, there has to be some humor in the retelling of the Genesis creation myth as like a evil event. You know, that's clearly there's an ironic reversal, and I imagine that involves some degree of humor. There's an episode I want to make, and I'm not sure when I'm going to do it about. I want to retell the Genesis creation myth, but tell it from the point of view of it being a funny, from it being silly. Silly in the sense of it's kind of, it has a humorous element to it. It's meant to be humorous and not tragic, or if it's meant to be tragic insofar as it is humorous somehow. So, but yeah, I think they take themselves. Most of these texts take themselves a little over seriously. Say no. I'll echo. I've never come across this book. It's clearly a Dutch book. I don't know. Something of heaven. I don't know what. Yeah, I've never read this book, so I don't know much about it. Sorry. Know what this means either. What is Ra functioning imbalancing Ma'at? I mean, Ra is kind of a force of good in the Egyptian mythology, the sun and life. And so I don't know if it balances Ma'at. Ma'at is sort of the cosmic balance that is justice. So I don't know that Ra functions in balancing Ma'at. Not quite sure what you mean. Right. Sorry, folks. I'm gonna start wrapping up, so I gotta scroll down. If you want to get in a super sticker or a super question, feel free to do it now. But I want to put it in so late that I can't answer it because I would hate to not be able to answer folks. But let me see here. Get down to. It's very kind. No question to ask. Just want to show my appreciation for your work and the incredible, valuable knowledge that you provide for free. Thank you. Yeah, thanks to people like you. Folks that help to support the channel through Patreon or super stickers and just random buy merch or whatever. But my goal always is to do this work for free and to not have any paywalls in anything that I do. So classes, courses, seminars, everything I do, I want to do as open access as I can. I think as a lot of folks know, I grew up pretty poor in South Jackson, Mississippi, and the idea that I would have access to, to education was not something that was in the agenda for me. And so I wouldn't have been able to afford a paywall. And I don't think a lot of other people, in Brazil and other developing countries people can afford it. So I want to make sure that I make things as accessible as possible. And, the generous folks that support the work on Patreon and PayPal donations or whatever, and make it all possible. So I really appreciate what you make possible. It allows me to do my work, and it allows me to do my work in a way that doesn't involve a paywall, which is great. All right. Folks, let me scroll down to the bottom. See if there's some last questions. Thank you. It's very kind of you. I really appreciate that. Just so folks know, that's just when you see this Yom Holedet Lasameach, it's just Hebrew for happy birthday. Maybe a happy day of your birth. Oops. Thank you for the super sticker. Have I ever heard of the Y Files? No, I've never heard of them. Is it like a YouTube channel? Folks should probably know this. I don't watch any other esoteric related YouTube content. Except for my friends Angela and other folks. But just I basically don't watch any sort of other esoterically related, because I find it drifts off into conspiracy theories and it's just like aliens and stuff. And so it's stuff that I don't find, or like true crime. And so it's just stuff that I'm not super interested in. I am religious, and I do follow a religion. I follow Reconstructionist Judaism, or I should say I'm an Orthodox Kaplanian is what my wife calls me. I'm a very strong follower of Mordecai Kaplan of blessed memory. Yeah, thank you. Hope things are safe out there in the Negev. Are there any ideas in esotericism that are similar to deflationary views on consciousness? Probably not. Not in Western. Well, I mean, there's definitely mystical trends that have a low opinion of consciousness and reason, and think of them as sort of lesser rungs on the ladder up to some kind of non-cognitive, non propositional unitive experience that is more fundamentally true. So I think that in that sense, yes, there is a long mystical tradition that has that could work, where cognition and reason ultimately must be extinguished in order to have a true, fundamentally true ontological experience of reality, i.e., um, and that's certainly true in the East, Buddhism and stuff, and even Advaita Vedanta and things. But yeah, I would say that it's there. But I don't think it's deflationary. I don't think it's sort of like the Churchlands or Dennett would say that consciousness is a folk psychological concept of no philosophical merit. I think they would say no, consciousness is a faculty of the mind that needs to be overcome by a higher order faculties, something like that. And to put it in more medieval terms, or at least the more sort of faculty oriented kind of language that you see in the Middle Ages and early modern period. Who is the identity of the third statue next to D and Thoth? My wife says you're a snappy dresser. Oh, thank you. I'm glad that she thinks I'm a snappy dresser. The third statue is. Can you see him? It's Agrippa. What up, Crips? It's Agrippa. So I feel like he's. I want to get a hat like this too. Folks, everything. Does anyone know what the name of this kind of hat is? I bet Bernadette Banner would know. Should email her. She knows all this kind of stuff. I want to get this kind of Agrippa hat. But yeah, it's Agrippa. What's the first instance of Gamaria? I guess you mean Gematria? I don't know what the first instance of Gematria is. Probably in the Hebrew Bible, I bet. I'm sure there's, I mean, I'm trying to think now. Maybe in Daniel or something, there's some Gematria. Gematria happening. I mean, certainly in the book of the Apocalypse of John, which is clearly the most Jewish book of the New Testament. There's a Gematria there. Maybe the book of Enoch or something. I don't know. I don't know where the first time someone's doing hermeneutics using Gematria as a tool. That's a great question. I don't know where the first instance of it is. Also, they do it in Greek too, folks. Yeah, there's Greek examples of Gematria that they also do it in Greek. It's not just in Hebrew. Any thoughts on the filioque? Oh, wow. Where I get to wade into a debate about, where I have like no dog in the fight, no horse in the race, no person in the economy. I guess I would side with the filioque. I think the filioque makes the most sense to me. Again, not that I have entitled to any opinion about Trinitarian economics, but when I look in sort of the spirit of Athanasius, and I think of Augustine's book on the Trinity, filioque seems to be a natural extension of that. But I'm not entitled to any opinion about this whatsoever. Yeah. So any possibility of a episode on Zoroastrian influences on Abrahamic religions? Folks should know that this whole field, the whole field of Zoroastrianism, and the whole question about the influence of Zoroastrianism on Judaism, is undergoing tectonic changes right now. And so that I would say that is the dust is very much up in the air about this question in a way that it was thought to be a settled question maybe for most of the 20th century, but the dust is in the air, and I'm definitely not educated enough in Zoroastrian studies to have an opinion about where the state of the scholarship is. But I think that it is a very unsettled state of scholarship right now, which is productive. I'm about that unsettledness. What do I think about the Baal fear panic resurgence in social media these days? Yeah, I've had a huge uptick in people watching my Baal video and my Molech video. It shows that we desperately need basic religious studies education, because people don't have any idea who Baal was. They don't have any. I mean, you look at the YouTube content on Baal and Moloch. It is just the Moloch. It's just terrible. It's like horrifically bad. It's just conspiracy theory and outdated scholarship all day. It's bad. It's terrible. It just shows you that we need basic religious studies education on topics about the Bible. This is the kind of stuff that Dan McClellan does really well. But yeah, most people have extremely distorted views of Baal and Moloch. The Moloch, they think Moloch was a god, and the scholarship now pretty clearly argues that it was not a god. It was a kind of ritual. Where human sacrifice was done to the Israelite God, and there's actually very little evidence of it being done to Baal, at least in a specifically Phoenician context on the coast. Now in Carthage, it's a different story. But yeah, this just shows you that the YouTube content is terrible about this, and there just needs to be more education about this material in general. But you can check out my videos on Molech, the Molech ritual, or Moloch ritual, and my episode on Baal. Ooh, Parmenides or Anaximander. Now we're getting to the big questions. I don't know. Parmenides is right only if modal collapse is true, right? And I don't know if I want to look. There's biting the bullet and there's swallowing the artillery. Do I want to go full modal collapse? Probably not. Probably not. Um, is Anaximander right? I don't know, but I am sympathetic to Parmenides, but I do think that if Parmenides is right from just a formal point of view, it's going to involve modal collapse, and I don't know that I want to go down the road of like full blown modal collapse. So, am I dodging the question? I don't think so. I think that's like legit. A legit modal collapse is a legit concern. Um, Modal collapse is a legit concern. Probably not to many other people. No one else is sitting around thinking about modal collapse. Currently reading Honograph. Good for you. That means you're reading the good stuff. What books do you suggest for a less academic angle for learning and balancing and reading? There's not a lot of great non-academic stuff. What I would say though is that if you're going to read Honograph, who's my teacher and who I agree with, basically I follow in his footsteps. I think if you want a different opinion that I do think matters, you probably want to read Arthur Versluis. Arthur Versluis comes at it from a much more phenomenological, sort of emic angle. I don't necessarily agree with Versluis, but I think that he's an important person to be read against um, Wouter, against Honograph. So I would recommend reading Arthur Versluis and to get another angle, to get another way of looking at what the study of Western esotericism. But again, my bias, I guess, is in the direction of Honograph. But I think Versluis offers a different interpretation of the material that's interesting, even if I don't agree with it. Interesting and important. Wow. Okay. So, other than Invisibility Day, have you written any other books? I have a couple published articles and over at Aries in the Brill Journal for Western Esotericism, but no books yet. Yet. That's coming. That is coming. Those are that process is beginning. I got a few books in me I want to write, but it's coming. All right. Get down to the bottom here. Wow, there's a lot of folks leaving a lot of great comments. Thank you guys for the super stickers. I appreciate them. Yeah, another super sticker. Thank you. Ooh, 10 pounds. Go to London and buy a pint. Maybe. I've heard it's gotten crazily expensive. I remember the days where I was over there 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and you get a pint in like London for like £5. I've heard it's not even, it's not even a thing now. Well, that's an interesting question that I can't answer. What works of fiction use mysticism and esotericism the best and most accurately? I mean, Umberto Eco's stuff is good. What's the book about John Dee? There's a book about John Dee that's done by somebody called like the Jerusalem trilogy that I've heard is really good, but I've never read it, so I don't know. Alan Moore's stuff is typically pretty good. He knows a lot about esotericism, and I think he incorporates it well into his graphic novels and stuff. But I have to admit, I just don't read a lot of fiction, so I don't know. I don't know. I'm actually a bad person to answer this question. Thank you very kindly. Greeting from Turkey, a country I've always wanted to visit. I've only visited Ephesus, Izmir. I've always wanted to visit more of Turkey, and hopefully I will get over there to see Chateau Hoyuk and Göbekli Tepe and Istanbul and the whole thing. So hopefully I will be there. But thank you very much for your kind words and the greetings from Turkey. I'd love to visit. Beautiful country. So why do you have an interest in Lacan within a structuralist tradition? Because Lacan was a structuralist. In fact, I can't imagine why you would care about Lacan if you weren't a structuralist. Yeah, he was a structuralist, and I'm sympathetic to his project. I think he's kind of out there a lot, but I think he's right. He's right. So I'm pretty sympathetic to Lacanian analysis, even if I think that Lacan's kind of nuts in many of the particulars. Any good book you could recommend for a 14-year-old? That's a great question. I guess it depends on how precocious of a 14-year-old. So I don't know much about like young teen literature. This is a great question. You know, there's not great books for like smart teenagers about this material. I know that Dr. Angel Puka is working on a children's book, I think about specifically about paganism. So, but yeah, it's a good question. I have to think about this. I'm not sure what book I'd recommend to a 14-year-old about esotericism. There's not great literature like that. I mean, it's hardly literature for grown people, much less smart teenagers. It's a good question. I don't know. Thank you. Your philosophy of mysticism video really brought my appreciation for philosophy. Thank you. That was a fun video to make. You know, I was running like 102 fever when I made that video. That's why there's no pictures or anything on that video. I was just like, I filmed it. It took me forever. I felt terrible and I was done with it. I like edited it and I was like, well, I was going to go back and put some pictures and stuff in there. And I was like, I'd feel terrible. Yeah, I had like 102 fever the entire time I was working on that. It was awful. I sort of kind of get delirious with the lights and stuff. So yeah, that was a tough video to produce just in general. But yeah, I'm glad it went over well. I thought it was a good video. I thought I made my points well, and yeah, it was good. Oh, how did the SciShow collab happen? They just emailed me. The guy that was working on the video, writing it, was a fan of Esoterica, but liked a lot of our alchemy content. Just shot an email over and was like, "Hey, do you want to work on help work on an alchemy video for SciShow?" And I'm like, "Sure." You know, this is a huge channel, does great science education. There's no way I was turning that down. So no, any situation where I can do educational work and get a big platform like SciShow, happy to do it. Happy to do it. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, they just interviewed me. It was a really simple, it was a really simple thing. Opinions on the rise of the new satanic panic. I'm not sure it ever totally went away, but yes, we are now living in the early periods of a new satanic panic. And I would highly recommend that people avail themselves of understanding the previous outbreak of the satanic panic in the 80s and 90s, because I think we are sailing into the midst of another one. I get people commenting on my videos all the time, accusing me of being a Satanist groomer and all kinds of ridiculous stuff. Where, yeah, these evangelicals or other kinds of extremist Christians are convinced that, you know, we're going to overthrow Christianity. And I'm like, I'm reading Bernard of Clairvaux. I am making a content about medieval Christians, and I'm very sympathetic to them. The last thing I'm interested in is like trying to undercut the beauty of Christianity or something. Just maybe crappy forms of Christianity that I'm not such a big fan of. Just like there are crappy forms of Judaism and Islam I'm not a big fan of. Crappy forms of Buddhism out there. But yeah, I'm not like, he's using his secret occult agenda to groom people. This is a boring conspiracy theory. Thank you for the super sticker. Yeah. Oh yeah, I should put this on the shirt. Modal collapse is a legit concern. Yeah, put this on I should formalize it too. It's so funny, like the modal collapse is just so there are rules in modal logic and impossible world semantics, And modal collapse is when all diamond functions become square functions. That is to say, all possible states of affairs become necessary. And typically, we don't like that. We don't like it that all possible non-logically contradictory worlds come into. It's like it's a massive violation of uh, of uh, now I'm losing the thread of no, oh gosh, the principle parsimony, or what is his name? His razor. Occam's razor. It's a violation of Occam's razor. And most people view violations of Occam's razor or violations of the principle of explosion to be logically bad. I would say the violation of the principle of explosion is bad. Logic is basically doomed at that point. But yeah, modal collapse is just when all possible statements become necessary statements, and typically people think that is, one, not true, and two, bad. And it could produce all kinds of, yeah. So generally speaking, that's why people don't like modal collapse. And most of the time, when you see formal things whose soundness involves modal collapse, people tend to shy away from them. And that's true of Parmenides's, at least the formalized version that I've seen and I've made. But also Gödel's ontological argument for the existence of God also might result in modal collapse if it's sound. But that's a story for a different day. It's a good question here. Do I think there's enough meat to make a video about possible Hermetic influence on Boethius's constellational philosophy? Because he does quote in Hermes Trismegistus. This would be a cool, probably not on its own, but this would be cool to do sort of Hermes in Christianity, early Christianity, and then we could talk about Lactantius and Boethius and some other stuff, and sort of talk about the debate, in Christianity about what to do with Hermes. My phone's going off. So this is an interesting question, because there's sort of a debate between Lactantius, who has a much more positive view of Hermes, and Augustine, who has a negative view, very negative. And Augustine would basically carry the day. And so this would be an interesting question of how did early Christian theologians deal with Hermes Trismegistus? How does Hermes show up in these debates? And it kind of, you could talk about Hermes or Lactantius and Augustine and Boethius and a couple other people. So maybe that could be an episode. I think that could be an episode. Thank you. Thank you. All right. What did the alchemists think about the magicians? The alchemists always wanted to separate themselves away from sorcerers, because they're always being associated with sorcerers, and you do not want to be associated with sorcery, especially after Pope John the 22nd, Pope John the 22nd, John 20th, one of them. John the 22nd did this whole thing where he really came out against sorcery and against alchemy. And the alchemists desperately sought to separate themselves off from any magic, and constantly reiterate that what we're doing is natural. What we're doing is the manipulation of secrets in nature. We're not doing sorcery. So, in general, the alchemists and the necromancers were not friends. The alchemists did not want to be associated with the necromancers. It's like the theater kids and the goths or something. I don't know. I know the correct parallel is something, but they were very much not. They did not want to be associated with the necromantic underground. What's my favorite cheese? Now we're getting to the big questions. Yeah, Gouda maybe. Gouda probably. Yeah, I like Gouda. Let's see here. All right. We're coming down to the end now. In the Glasgow Library, there's a QR code sticker for me. That's hilarious. But you shouldn't do that. Don't like. I don't want anyone to put like stickers and stuff that like I don't know that makes that like you're not supposed to be there. But thank you. But it is hilarious that there's a sticker about me in the Glasgow Library. Yes, absolutely. Any plans for discussing other female mystics in the future? What if I told you that literally arm's length away from me is the next lady mystic that I want to cover, who is Catherine of Genoa. So absolutely. Do I want to study? Do I want to do more lady mystics? Absolutely. And here's the next one we're going to do is Catherine of Genoa. So she's on my list. She's literally on the shorthand list here, the shorthand pile of people. So absolutely, we got lots of more lady mystics to cover. So don't fret. Don't worry. Thank you very kindly for the super sticker. Let's see. Do I have any interest in Carl Jung's work? No, not really. I mean, it's interesting and it's ingenious, but his work on alchemy just doesn't have a lot to do with historical alchemy. It has more to do with Jung's psychological projects, which are fascinating on their own, but his book Psychology and Alchemy is really just about psychology. The connections to alchemy are incredibly cherry picked, and he pretty grossly contorts the evidence to get what he wants, which I guess a lot of people do. But yeah, I don't have a lot of interest in Jung. And sort of the world of psychoanalysis, my interests lie primarily with Lacan, which is probably going to be an unpopular take around here, but can't change the truth. How did Gnostic doctrines directly influence alchemical practice? They didn't really. I mean, at least in the European context. That's less true, of course, for Zosimus, where there's like direct intercourse with alchemy, but Zosimus doesn't like the alchemists. So he knows them and doesn't like them. So that's a place where he's responding against them. And there may have been some Gnostic influence, with the Brethren of Purity and sort of Ismaili esoteric circles in Baghdad, but that's a world that we're still sorting out, and I don't know a ton about. But European alchemy was surprisingly not. I mean, it was really not really influenced by Gnostic stuff. And this is a question also about Gnosticism and Jewish mysticism. This is where it's a lot more murky. Gershom Scholem believes that there is a connection between Gnosticism, historical Gnosticism, and Jewish mysticism. He sees some connection, some Gnostic stuff, and it's like Sefer Bahir and the Zohar. I think scholarship has gotten a lot more careful about that question since the days of Gershom Scholem. But there may be some there. I'm more skeptical than not, but yeah, worth exploring. Like I said, I'll talk about it when I in my episode on the Sefer Bahir, I think I talk about it a little bit. Right. Have I ever have any experiences that you consider profoundly divine? Synchronicities are prophetic dreams. I don't think so. I don't think so. But I might just be tone deaf to that kind of thing. It may have happened and I just didn't know it. So That's an interesting question. I'm an elementary school teacher and would love to do a lesson to my older elementary students about alchemy and mysticism, but I'm finding it difficult. Well, first of all, thank you for the work you do as an educator. As an educator, K through 12 people are really heroes. I have nothing but admiration for you guys. Just it's super important work, and you guys work your you guys are amazing. So thank you. First of all, thank you for the work you do as a K through 12 educator. Mysticism stuff might be a little too complicated. And again, I'm not a K through 12 educator, so I may be underestimating these young people. Mysticism strikes me as a little complicated. I think alchemy you could do, right. You could sort of ask kids like what what makes up things, what are things made out of, and can we make things out of other things, right. Can we take something apart and make something out of it. And so sorry. And so I think one could do some interesting alchemy stuff there in terms of what do you think things are made of. Can you take things down to their basic building blocks and then build other things? And that's basically the alchemical, um, what's the right word? That's the conceit of alchemy, right? So I think that there can be some things there. Um, what else could you do that could be interesting alchemy wise? You could even look at some of the cool pictures. I mean, I obviously don't want to look at the ones with naked people on them because you get in trouble. But I think some of the other ones could be really cool. Like, how do you hide stuff in pictures? Like the green line dissolving the sun. It's like, this is sort of acid eating gold. So I think you could do some cool stuff with the art. This is a great question, though. I don't know. I'm not a K through 12 educator, so it's hard for me to know what kids know and what they don't. But I guess I would err on the side of kids are a lot smarter than I think they are, which my kids are always smarter than I think they are. So, but yeah, good luck with that. Good luck. I hope that you have some success. And again, thank you for the work you do as an educator. Well, thank you for the, yeah, you got to start somewhere. And that if stuff is going over your head, that's just a good reason to keep trying. Some stuff's tough, but you'll get it. It just takes time. All right. Folks, let's keep scrolling down. Oh, if I reached the end, I think I reached the end of the questions. Rabbi Miriam, good Shabbos. Good to see you. Chat. Am I sympathetic to the position that John the Baptist and Jesus were related? Yeah, I think they were. I think they were probably cousins. That's my guess. We don't know, but my guess is they were cousins. So yeah. What are my thoughts on Terrence McKenna? He was kind of a loon, but he's like crazy like a fox. Dana Trail has all kinds of fun things to say about the time cube and all that stuff. I think that stuff is all crazy, but again, there's you can have kind of crazy. They can be really productive, really ingenious, crazy stuff like that. So, all right, folks. Well, I'm gonna get going because I've been here a little longer than I thought it'd be. Wow, 2.5 hours. Definitely not a live streamer, and also doing this standing up is like quite a thing. When you do live streaming standing up, I mean, I'm a standing desk now. Thank you for the super sticker, by the way. So I'm going to wrap up. There's a lot of great questions coming out. I don't have time to get to them. Just because, like I said, I've been doing this for 2.5 hours, and also I did office hours for another hour and a half before this. So I think I've been standing now for about 5 hours. So yeah, I'm gonna take a little break. Well, folks, I really appreciate all the well wishes, all the happy birthday wishes. It really means a lot. Thank you for the supers. Look for more episodes coming out soon, right? We're gonna get one on Bernardo Clairvaux soon. And his mysticism of love and all of that. So there's a lot coming. There's a lot coming here on the channel. Thanks to you guys. I really appreciate all of the support and kindness that I receive on the channel. And I'm gonna go sit down and rest a little bit. I'm gonna do some more reading, get ready for Shabbat. And yeah, I wish all of you guys a fantastic weekend. Great Shabbat if you observe Shabbos. And thank you guys for being such an amazing crew of people with such fantastic questions. And yeah, for being such amazing people that make this channel possible. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's great. This is just fantastic. So, all right, everybody, I'll see you folks soon, and hope everyone has a fantastic weekend. You guys take it easy. Take care of yourselves, and take care of the folks that take care of you.